I'm Daisy. I'm in the 13s, 14s. I've been at Bank Street for 11 years, so since I was 3. I still go to Bank Street, obviously, and an aspect of the Bank Street experience that has really changed my life is the camaraderie. And so the sense that everyone around you is rooting for you to succeed and to learn and to be you and the best version of yourself you can be. So I can't succeed as a learner myself unless I feel supported and unless I feel that everyone around me wants me to succeed. And I feel that this is a place where I can.
Okay. I'm Ruby. I'm in the 13s, 14s, or 8th grade, and I've been going here for 10 years. And something I really value about my Bank Street experience is how much teachers actually care about you learning and actually care about you succeeding, and not so that like they look good, it's for that like you get a full experience and you learn in whatever way they think, or what you learn how you learn, and they'll adapt to that. But also knowing that like having real world experiences of not every teacher is going to tell you everything. So they're like really honest with you in like how they teach you, and they tell you how they're teaching you. So I really appreciate that.
I'm Sandy. I'm also in the 8th grade, and this is my 11th year at Bank Street. And I think an aspect that has really shaped my life, Bank Street has really shaped my life, is the notion that problem solving is a great form of learning, and that especially in math and science, you may draft your own procedure, you may try to figure out your own way around a problem, and if that's wrong, then you try again, and there's no okay, you did this wrong. No, then I'm the teacher, and I'm going to tell you how to do it right. I'm going to try to let you figure it out on yourself, and the idea that student-based learning and students conversing and using each other and bouncing off ideas is a great way to then shape your own ideas and shape your own and find your own path of learning that may be completely different from someone else, and that there's room for that within the curriculum.
Hi, I'm Ben. I'm in the 9th grade at Bard High School Early College, Manhattan. I went to Bank Street for 10 years. One aspect of Bank Street that I think is really valuable to the entire experience is the way that we've always been, sort of trained to like think critically about the things that we see. One example of this that I was just thinking about when I was thinking about what I was going to respond with was in 6th grade when we were presented a bunch of book covers, like children's book covers, and we were encouraged to sort of think critically about them and see who was being represented and who wasn't being represented, and the problems with any representation that was happening. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Zoe. I'm currently in 9th grade at the Nightingale Bamford School, and I started at Bank Street in kindergarten, so that's 9 years, I think. And one aspect of Bank Street that has just really been important in my life is how it taught me that my voice like matters in the classroom, especially that the teachers really respected my ideas and my voice and treated me almost as if I was an adult and that my opinions mattered like I was one, and that's really helped me in high school just in terms of being an active participant in class and knowing when to talk to my teachers.
Hi, my name is Takashi. I'm currently in 10th grade and I attend the Beacon School. I attended Bank Street since I was 5 years old, so for 9 years, and I think an impactful experience that I've had at Bank Street, I think, was having the opportunity to come to such a safe learning environment every day where I learned to collaborate with others, and not only learn to collaborate with others, but also to understand others and how their opinions might be a certain way, and to understand how to accept them in a way that I can still have my own opinions on certain issues. So.
Great. So first question is for Daisy. Can you talk about a specific project or assignment or piece of work during your time at Bank Street that really stands out and that it stretched you academically? And give us as much detail as you can.
Can I take this out?
Sure.
So one example, it's actually been this year. in 7th and 8th grade, the students actually are the teachers for current events, so we bring in articles that we care about and that we want to discuss with our class. And so my article was chosen, and I thought, what's something 13 and 14-year-olds are really going to get excited about? And I was like, globalism. So I have to get them excited about this. And so each person gets a 20-minute block to discuss that. And so I said, I'm going to do a formal debate. And so I spent my entire weekend, and I had to figure out how to connect this to things that they care about and how to have a rich and meaningful discussion and make it into something that they can want to discuss. And so I said, well, isn't Killmonger from Black Panther kind of like a globalist? And I had people, we came in from 4 different perspectives. There were 4 teams, and each team had a different reason to like or not like globalism. And everyone actually cared about it. And so it kind of made me realize that if we make connections between things, that we can get people to care about what we care about. And it helped me, my planning skills, of course, because I had to teach a lesson. And I actually got to do an hour-long lesson, and every teen in the room was arguing about economics and Trump's speech at the UN and things that I never thought that they would care about. And so I was really glad that they did.
Great. Does another panelist want to take a crack at that same question, but maybe think about a learning experience from one of the younger grades that really stands out as stretching you?
So one experience I really remember is in the Force 5s when we had to make family boards. So it's like a piece of cardboard that has pictures of your family and like people you care about, and it was like meant for like if you missed your parents, because you were 4 years old and you're first going to school. So if you miss your family, you can look at pictures of them, you can sit with a teacher and talk about the different experiences, because 4-year-olds are very self-centered and love to talk about themselves. And I really valued that experience because not only was it like something that you were meant to be for, like you weren't supposed to be this adult who knew everything and could figure out everything. You were allowed to be a child. You were allowed to miss people. But also with those family boards, you got to connect with through the teacher setup, you were supposed to sit with a friend, or not a friend, just another person, and share your family board and talk about the things that you care about. So it really felt like, kind of like what I was saying, like teachers care about you, and they care about you doing well in not only an education sense, but in a mental sense. And that's something I didn't really understand when I was 4. I was like, great, I get to talk about myself for 30 minutes. But thinking about it when I'm older, I don't know if that's weird. When I was older, I really saw that like it wasn't just let me share my experiences, it was more about this is something I care about and I'm allowed to share that with other people. And yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to move to Ben for my next question. So one of Bank Street's core commitments is to diversity, equity, and social justice in all of its forms. So can you talk about how this commitment has manifested throughout your experience as a student at Bank Street?
So it's sort of, specifically I could name so many incidences, or not incidences, but pieces of curriculum and things that we learned about that really, the commitment to diversity is sort of like the backstage for. I remember as early as the 8s, 9s, we had a civil rights curriculum where we really were encouraged to, just even as 8-year-olds, think about what was going on in America at the time and sort of the reasons behind it. And in the upper school, a big theme, or last year's theme, I remember, every Wednesday we would have an upper school assembly, and the upper school is grades 5 through 8, or 10s, 11s to the 13s, 14s. And the theme was whose story is being told, and it was based off of Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's TED Talk, where she talked about that, basically saying, going back to what I was mentioning earlier, like representation, who's getting represented, how are they getting represented, and a big theme was sort of having a diverse, or every single week I should also mention, we would have, basically every single week we would have a performer or a speaker perform something or give us a speech, and they were all about and they were all sort of relating to that concept, and just as like sort of something that the entire upper school participated in. That was one example, but it's really baked into most of the curriculum that we learn when it comes to humanities. It's baked into the books that we learn, the books that we read and talk about, and it's sort of like that sort of thinking about diversity is really important to everything that we learn and is related to everything that we learn.
Great. Does someone else want to take a crack at that question? Follow up? Go ahead.
It's not one singular thing. I think how we approach social justice is evident in everything a Bank Street student or a Bank Street teacher does. So we're very careful about our language choices because everything we do is to exude acceptance and celebration of different cultures than ours. And in the lower grades, you don't realize that your teachers are talking like this and that they talk that family structures might have this. You don't notice that the picture books in your class might represent different types of people, but once you get to the older grades, you realize that if you go somewhere outside of Bank Street, the students you're going to meet there haven't necessarily discussed the things that you've discussed there. So they might say something and you might think, oh, is that accepting of another culture? And you'll stop yourself and be like, oh, but they were in my social studies class. So it's in everything we do, like Ben said. Our history classes, we approach it from one culture perspective, then from another, and examine the holes in the history that the majority of the country is taught. And so I think part of what makes Bank Street so special is that all of this learning is integrated so connectedly into everything the students and the teachers and the curriculum does.
Okay. Ruby, what does it mean to be a Bank Street kid?
Okay, so a Bank Street child is someone who doesn't believe everything they see. And I feel like that's really easy to say, but so if you read history books, we don't do many textbooks, but in like 7th and 8th grade, you start reading from textbooks and you read it, and even before you read it, your teachers are having conversations about how the language, kind of like what Daisy was saying, how the language is different when they're talking about, like, because it was written 100 years ago. The language is different. It's changed. It's socially unacceptable. It's just unacceptable now. But you don't realize that's not normal. So I feel like a Bank Street student is someone who can openly talk about anything, even if it's super personal, or if, because it's such a community, you feel like you can say whatever and someone will be there to support you. And
Yeah, that's great. Takashi, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think that being a Bank Street child, I think for me especially, I think is really always trying to grow, and each day waking up with the idea of trying to learn something new and not be afraid if you're wrong, and that you know that you'll make mistakes and that things will happen that won't go your way, but that not only at Bank Street you'll be in an environment, but once you're out of Bank Street, that you'll have the tools you need to get yourself back on track and the support throughout your whole experience at Bank Street to get yourself back on track, and also to feel strong enough in your opinions and in yourself where you can, in a way, accept others' opinions instead of immediately, like if someone has a different view on a certain issue, immediately shooting their opinion down and saying that's wrong, that's not how I learned, that's not what I was taught, and learning that people have different opinions and that you shouldn't just be with the people that have the same opinions as you. You should try as much as you can to branch out, and that you don't have to change your opinion, but you should try as much as you can to accept the opinions that they have and understand, most importantly, why they have those opinions. So, thank you.
Great. Zoe, you're up. So, Bank Street ends in 8th grade. We are proud of the fact that we're an 8th grade school. We believe that it allows us to nourish and nurture childhood longer, because childhood is not a dress rehearsal. At the same time, the high school application process in New York City can be quite daunting. Some of you know that from the process that you're in now, even though it's for younger children. So can you talk a little bit about how Bank Street supported you through the process, what lessons you learned from it, and how well prepared you felt making the transition to high school?
Okay, well, one way that Bank Street really supported me through the process is it taught me from a young age how to think about myself as a learner and just myself as a person, and that really helped, especially in high school interviews. So like, for example, in the upper school, when we have parent-teacher conferences, the students are actually in there with their teachers and their parents, and they're leading the conversation, saying like, I feel like I've really grown in this area and I could do better in this area. And that really helped me, especially in high school interviews, because it taught me like, they're asking you like, what type of learner are you, and I'm like able to answer that. And in terms of skills it's taught me for high school, it's taught me that I really need to fully understand a concept. So like, for example, this year I was doing really well in biology, but I had no idea what was going on in class. And that was really concerning me. And I went to my teacher about it, and I let her know, like, yes, I see like this number here, but I would really appreciate like some extra help with this because I want to fully understand this. And she ended up helping me with it. But I think that understanding that I am more than a number, that my knowledge is more important than my actual grade on this paper, is something that Bank Street taught me that really helped me.
I often interact with other heads of school, and they tell me that they love Bank Street kids who go to their high schools for two reasons. One is that they know that anytime there's a lull in the conversation, they can count on the Bank Street kid to spice it up. But they also know that whenever there is a perceived injustice, whether at the classroom level or at the school level, could be that kids feel like they need an extra couple of days to study for a quiz, or that there's a policy that doesn't seem right, that the Bank Street kids are going to be the ones leading the brigade against, to support the change. Did either of, Ben, did you want to add on to that in terms of your preparation for high school?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so a lot of people, I think a narrative that happens a lot is that with progressive education, we're not necessarily being taught like normal school. Like there was a lot of concern, I think, that like we weren't learning enough math or whatever. But what I found going into actually a public high school that has an early college program, that we actually have learned more than enough, and that Bank Street actually does go above and beyond to fulfill like the standards of normal education processes in America. And yeah, I think that's something to be aware of. Like, Bank Street sets your kid up for success in any school in the city that they'll possibly go to. And just because like this is a private school and we are a school that participates in progressive education, it doesn't necessarily mean that your kid can't go to STY or Bronx Science or, you know, a traditional private school. Yeah.
Sandy, this has come up quite a bit in the introductions, but can you say a little bit more about the role that the adult people play in the lives of children at Bank Street, and specifically how would you describe your relationships with your teachers?
Well, yeah, I think in terms of the teachers, the connections are more personal, especially in the smaller class. And in the upper school, besides 8th grade, you eat lunch in the same rooms as your teachers, and that allows you to establish a connection that you really don't find anywhere else. And there's still a sense of respect, as there should be, and authority. But then in terms of the learning environment, it allows teachers to make connections with certain students that wouldn't otherwise be made. And at least for me, I think the best learning I've done is when I can see connections to my own lives, and I can see, yes, this happened in this year at this time, but why should I care? And not necessarily why should I care, but how does this affect me? And as a person, how can I work to better my society using this knowledge? And when teachers can make connections with students and can be one-on-one with students and can understand that students' weaknesses or strengths and how they learn, that can really improve their experience. And a student who may feel that they're falling behind or that they can't grasp the concept as easily as their peers, which can be very daunting, especially in the smaller classroom. There's always time in the schedule, and there's always connection through emails and the understanding that reaching out for help is natural, and you should feel okay, and it is encouraged to reach out for help when you don't fully understand the concept.
Zoe?
Well, like, for example, even just now, about like an hour before this, I was upstairs on the 7th floor like with my old teachers, like talking to them about how high school's going and stuff like that. And they were asking me questions, and it was a lot about like my academics in high school, but also just like questions like about my life that might not pertain to school that they just knew because like we had a stronger connection. Like the conversations we had with our teachers, like they didn't end after math class, like they'd go into the lunch period after that. And I think that's something that's really special about like Bank Street student-teacher relationship.
Great. Takashi, so these wonderful people in this auditorium are exploring lots of options in their, within the landscape of the New York City schools. So as someone who has recently launched from here, what would you say is the greatest value of going to Bank Street?
Well, I think there's so many values that I think I've learned from Bank Street. Me personally, going to Beacon High School, there's a lot of adapting I needed to do and that I have done. I think coming from Bank Street, which is like 40 kids per grade, to 400 in my grade. So I think that a value that I learned at Bank Street would definitely be, I think, to always like try to adapt as much as possible and to not be afraid of a challenge, but to accept it. And I think that for many kids, I think it's daunting to go from such like a focused class of 40 kids to 400. And I think that there are a lot of, I think people who, if they did that, they probably would have doubted themselves and said, oh, well, maybe I should go to a similar environment. I'll succeed in that. And I think that coming out of Bank Street, I felt that I was equipped with enough tools to be able to take on this challenge and succeed and do well and flourish just as I did at Bank Street in this new environment. So I think that would be one of the most important values I got from Bank Street.
Great. Follow up, Sandy?
I think a great value, not necessarily the best, but one of them is that you should never make assumptions about people or about history or about any problem that you're facing, because empathy is the key to really understanding what someone is going through or a certain era in history. So trying to understand that before you assume how they're navigating their issues and how you should help them, because what you are experiencing is completely different from someone else's experiencing, and especially as you explore history and very controversial times in U.S. history, not pointing out someone as the villain and someone as the good guy, is understanding that society has crafted us, and that the people make decisions not necessarily because they want to, but because they are peer pressured or because they feel like it is their only way out. So before you think that someone is doing it to be, if someone has hurt you, that they're doing it to be resentful, just take a step back and try to empathize and sympathize before going to someone else, before talking badly about them.
First of all, thank you guys. It's a really, as parents, we truly appreciate the insight you are able to give the school, and it's amazing how appreciative and articulate you are about your education as students. You all seem very introspective, and so it is a tough question. I want to follow up on Takashi and address this to Ben, Zoe, and Takashi. You guys obviously loved your elementary up to 8th grade education. And I was curious, Takashi said it was an adjustment. How challenging is that across the board? Do you hear from your other classmates, and for Ben and Zoe, to come from such a progressive and wonderful and collaborative environment to perhaps a strict private school or to a large public school? And is it a jolting experience, or is it a challenge that everyone looks forward to?
Yeah, so first I'm happy that you appreciate our time here.
I do.
But yeah.
Nowhere else to be on a Thursday night.
Yeah, so I think that adjusting for high school, I think that first I really had to adjust to for high school was there was a lot more testing. Bank Street, we could talk about and sort of have like discussions about topics, not just like current events, but in history and other subjects, and then we'll have a better understanding. Although the Beacon School, I love it, it's a great environment for me as a learner, and it has progressive learning, I felt that there was more testing to it, so that it's more like you have to grasp the information and then reiterate it so that you could get the grade that you wanted, or like how to succeed in that environment. And I think that there are two different ways to succeed in Bank Street and other schools, but I think that across the board for other classmates of mine, there was a lot of adjusting that they had to do as well, even if they went to similar environments such as Elizabeth Earl, which I know has a very similar curriculum. I think that they still had to adjust to a more strict and testing-based environment. And although like we did succeed because we do have the tools that we got from Bank Street and learned how to adapt, and that if there's going to be more testing, how to plan our schedules in a certain way. Time management is something that I think I really did well and helped me succeed at Beacon. But I think really, I'd say that we did a lot of adjusting, and I think over time, I think all the experience that we got from Bank Street and the tools that we got from really showed through how well we're doing in high school. I think not just for me, but the majority of my class. So yeah, thank you.
I mean, I think that no school is like Bank Street. You know, some may have less testing, some, I think most have more. But I think everyone has to adjust when they go to high school. And I think that Bank Street, as Takashi mentioned, has really provided us with the tools that can be used for success in any school environment. You know, the capability to critically think, the social skills, everything that's been ingrained into our brains and the way we are as people from a very young age really enables us to be successful in any environment. I think that the Bank Street alumni are really a testament to that, because we all go to such different schools and are all very successful in them. Yeah, I think that everyone adjusts, but I think that it's a normal thing, and it's not necessarily something to be afraid of or to think that is a bad thing.
And I feel like the 8th grade year, like leading up to leaving Bank Street, in the spring you have the 8th grade musical, the trip to DC, and then graduation, like I go for like a whole 10 minutes on that, but basically every kid gets to get a speech. I dressed up as Lisa Sprague Mitchell, and who is the founder of our school, and it was amazing. But I feel like, and my whole grade just bonded immensely over that, and then I was really worried that at least rejoining with my grade might be kind of awkward after we all go off to such different schools. But then I learned that those values that we were all taught at a young age and those experiences that we all experienced together really kept us tight-knit. And I feel like that my school, at least, it's really good at adjusting, the teachers adjusting to the students. So I feel like they saw me as a person with a growth mindset, and knowing that I came from a progressive school, and they've really helped me in that way. Or they've helped me in a way. How do I say this? They've taken time to give me comments and feedback that really resonates with me, being from someone who comes from a progressive education instead of just getting a letter on my paper.
We'll take 2 more questions so that there's time outside. Seems like someone has the mic.
Hello. Is there anything you don't like about Bank Street?
I think sometimes it's very easy to get trapped in the bubble of Bank Street, and even in the bubble of New York. And so I'm in the class, one of the classes doing the Royal Virginia Exchange. We call it Madison because that's where they live. The Madison Exchange. And that was really eye-opening to me, to not only, we do talk about some issues. We haven't really gotten into it. We have conversations in February, I think. But we haven't really gotten into politics, but just seeing that, the differences. Because I talked to my teacher about, why do we do this? And, what's the value behind it? And she was kind of talking about, how breaking down the wall, not just in politics, but also just in, teenagers thinking they're so different from each other because they live in different places, and that like everyone plays a sport, or even if you don't play a sport, there's like fundamental values that universally we have as humans. So I think it's very easy to get trapped in the bubble of your grade, who's 40 people or 40 something people, and it always is such a close-knit grade that it's hard, in 8th grade it's hard to imagine yourself going anywhere else, or even just sitting next to a different person that you haven't sat with. So I think that's something that's hard about Bank Street, but there's also values to it, and values to growing up with the same kids and seeing everyone's growing differently.
Well, an aspect of Bank Street, I wouldn't necessarily say I don't like, but that has been hard for me to navigate my own life because of it, is that in the classroom there's a sense of everyone is equal, which we are, and everyone is on an even playing field, and that there's value in a grade and there's value in that, but there's also value in discussion, and that there's really not a lot of room to be competitive in the classroom. While the academics are very rigorous, if you learn at the pace you do, and then from an athletic standpoint, it's hard to completely flip that adjustment. Now we're here to win, and now we're here to play hard and fight hard, and we're gonna do everything we can to have the other team lose, and then we go back to the classroom the next day, and now we can't do that anymore. So,
What was the outcome of the game?
we lost by 3. It was a close game.
The girls won.
Yeah,
The girls won by 20.
the girls allowed 3 points. Our game came down to like the last 4 seconds. I know it was, but I think just the idea that it's hard to, especially in the small classroom, when is it okay to clash, and when is it time to bring really back and to let others have their chance? And it's hard to make that adjustment playing athletically, especially on the varsity teams, when there's even more competition and more fight to represent, because this is your last year, and you want other schools to fear you. And Bank Street, I think in the past, our athletics haven't been the best, and our seasons haven't had the most wins. But now we want to. In volleyball, I was on the basketball.
Recent history today.
I was gonna say we flipped the script, but you didn't let me get to that part. But I think now we want to rebuild a reputation for ourselves. It's hard to do on the field versus in the classroom.
Toby, you have a powerful role. You get to pick who has the question.
So what happens to the kid who does ruffle the feathers, or does clash, or does have resistance, or is competitive, or doesn't want to play by the rules?
So I think one aspect, to answer one part of your question, I think a really good example is in 8th grade, my last year at Bank Street. We had, there's a very progressive, liberal-minded program at Bank Street, as all of you probably know, since you're looking at it seriously. But I think that there was a Trump supporter, and he had very conservative ideals and opinions on certain issues. And he was a kid that I've known since I was 5. He was one of my friends. And I think during that year, it really helped me learn not only about my own opinions and my own views on certain subjects, but why Bank Street is as amazing as it is. Because instead of Bank Street sort of implementing their progressive, liberal-minded ideas aggressively and saying, no, that's all wrong, we had discussions about it. And we had discussions about certain topics that were big because it was during the 2016 election. So we had subjects that we talked about, such as gun control, climate change, and other many big issues that were being talked about during that year. And we sort of had to discuss about it with someone who didn't have similar views as everyone else. And there were some that even sided on certain opinions with this person, and others that sided respectively in their own. But I think that really helped me learn how not only at Bank Street we should respect others' opinions, and that it's not only black and white, but that there are some I guess there's some overlaps in that there's some people we agree, like for example, especially in this example, that there's some opinions and some topics that we agree with, and then others that we may not, but that we should find the overlap, and that we shouldn't just basically silence them. And I think that we should really value their voice, being human, so yeah.
Well, there are ruffle feathers, there are arguments and things like that, of course, it's a school. But I think what really helps us rebuild from them is that there's such a strong relationship between everyone. There's such a strong foundation that there's nothing we can't come back from as a community. And we always tackle it just like that as a community. So we'll have discussions about why this happened, how this happened, why the person did what they did, and why another person reacted a certain way. And so I think because you know everyone around you so well and you can't lose these valuable friendships and relationships and connections, there's nothing that the teachers and the community can't handle of a ruffling of feathers. And everyone always approaches a situation like that together and not alienating a person, but bringing them in and trying to welcome them even more.
And I would just add that from our youngest grades, we introduce a framework. It's a quadrant, and we talk about the mistake maker, the ouch feeler, the bystander, and the upstander. And it's a framework that we carry through all the way to the upper school as a way of having conversations in moments of ruffled feathers and hardship. And it's not perfect, but it is, as you can see, really embedded in the way that we think and be as a community. Can you join me in thanking these 6